Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla. If you're new here, you should definitely subscribe. Today we're going to talk about all the books I read in 2023. I read about 43 books and we're just going to get right into it. I'm going to go in order of every month and every book I read. The first half of this, I donated a lot of books because we were going in the RV and I didn't want the whole bunch of books with me. So a lot of these books at the beginning will just be shown on the screen, but I do have quite a few with me. So first up is Good Girl, Bad Blood. This is one of the books in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. I gave this one 4 stars. I still think about it to this day. The ending was weird. Holly Jackson is so good at writing mysteries, and I want to read the other ones that she has. But 4 stars, solid book. I love it so much. And then we have It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. I gave this one 3 stars. This is the influencer girl goes to a small fishing town and then falls in love with a fisherman. It was way spicier than I thought it was going to be. That was one of the first spicy books I've ever read, so I was a little thrown off, but I ended up liking it. It wasn't anything too crazy. I don't think about it to this day, so I feel like 3 stars is pretty valid. And then we have Verity by Colleen Hoover. Now listen, the beginning of this year, on a Colleen Hoover kick. Same with 2022. She ruled the world. Verity, it still holds that 5-star position. It was so good and so disturbing. If you haven't read Verity and you think like Colleen Hoover is lame, go read it because you'll change your mind. It was such a good book. It was so weird. Okay. In February, we have Without Merit by Colleen Hoover. Now this is one you can skip. This one was trash, for a lack of a better term. I gave this one 3 stars, but honestly it's probably like a 1.5. The first half of the book was fine, kind of. The second half felt like a depression awareness book, like reading out of a textbook, and it was weird. I didn't like it at all. Then we have Dial A for Aunties. I did not like this book very much. The general idea of it, the whole plot as a whole, was great. Good idea for a book. The execution was not my favorite. I thought this book was insanely repetitive and I just wanted like 100 pages of it to just be ripped out. So because of that, I gave it 2 stars, and I feel like that's pretty valid. And then we have Hook, Line, and Sinker, which is the second book with It Happened One Summer. This one was from the sister's perspective. Basically, while It Happened One Summer was going on, this was also going on. Yeah, I think it was at the same time, or it was like right after. Either way, it was like you get both perspectives from the town and what's happening, but 2 different characters and 2 different love stories. So I gave it 4 stars. In March, I read I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy, and this was, is it called a memoir? But it was just a whole book about her whole entire life, and it was so good. Some of it was like a little trigger heavy. Like the whole book, you need to check triggers if you're gonna read it. It was a lot of heavy subjects, but I feel like how it was written was perfect and so good. I don't rate books like this just because it's based on someone's life. I'm not gonna rate their life. That's weird. It was such a good book and I think everyone needs to read it. We have Crushing It. Honestly, I don't remember what this was about. Wait, no, I know what it was. This girl is going to a bar and reconnects with some man from her past, has to read something embarrassing on stage, and it's like a whole contest type of thing, and it's a romance. And it was pretty good. Clearly not very memorable. I gave it 3.7 stars. Next up is 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was a 5-star. Easy. Such a good book. I put off reading this book for at least a year. That was cruel. It deserved to be read first. It was so good. It's set in olden times. Not sure the decade, but it was old. But it was like a almost reality TV type of thing. This girl is hired to write Evelyn Hugo's life story when she's an old lady, and she's like telling the girl everything she needs to write. Reveals a gigantic secret about her life that she's been hiding for forever, like 60 years. It was crazy. 5 stars. In April was a good month. I read Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. We all know how I feel about the series. It's perfection. It's so good. I gave this book 5 stars. Love this series with my whole heart. Evangeline and Jax are just perfect. Moving on. We read Kingdom of the Wicked. I read directly after this because I couldn't find the second one. Actually, I don't even know if it was out yet, but I needed some other fantasy. This was my first ever fantasy, and it's sort of like a fairy tale. So I picked up Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. This being my first fantasy was so good. I gave it 4 stars. I still love the series so much, but I just can't believe I went from this to this, and then my whole fantasy vibe just took off, and that's basically all I've been reading since. This was 4 stars. I wasn't obsessed with it like Once Upon a Broken Heart. So, oh, actually, that was dumb. I actually did find this book because this is what I read after that. 4.7 stars. Once again, I love it, except I didn't love the last 10 pages because that messed with my heart and my brain and everything else. It was just not good. Mainly because I had to wait like 8 months to get the next one. That was the not good part. If I read this and then had the next one, fine. But leaving off on this for months, oh my god, that was cruel. That was evil. But this was so good. I don't know why it's not a 5-star. I think I'm gonna bump it up that 0.25. I think it deserves it. I think about this all the time. This specific ending, oh my god. After reading some fantasy for the first time, I got into The X Talk. Where's she at? Do I not have this with me? It's basically a fake dating, but enemies to lovers too, and it was so good. Basically, they start a fake dating podcast. Like, they're fake dating and pretending to be dating on the podcast, if that makes sense. 5-star, perfect. Then I got into Kingdom of the Cursed, which is the second Kingdom of the Wicked book. This one I gave 3.5 stars. The story was just taking too long to get to the point, and so I gave it a little less. I love the characters. Wrath in this book was so cute. I could see the enemies to lovers happening, and I was eating it up. In June, I went back home for the summer, and my sister and stepmom were on their reading grind and were telling me to read more Colleen Hoover books. So I did, and they were so good. First up was Never Never. I think about this book all the time. I loved the whole story, the whole concept, the whole love situation. The beginning was so confusing because you start out with these 2 characters who have lost their memory. So you're just starting like they are, in the middle of whatever's happening, and you're trying to piece together the whole puzzle of what happened. And it was so cute and so good, and I loved it, and it was 6 stars. Then I read Heartbones directly after that. Also 6-star. This one, honestly, I don't remember as well, but I know that I was like having all the emotions, laughing, crying, everything. And when I have emotion like that when I'm reading, I just automatically give the book 6 stars. If words on a piece of paper can make me cry and can make me laugh out loud, it deserves a 6. If it can make me lol. So June, I only read 2 books, but both 6 stars in 1 month, which is crazy. Another one I left at home was The Good Girl Complex. I don't really remember this one either. I don't know if that's like me and my memory, or just these books weren't as good as I remember them being, or as I thought they were at the time. I gave it 4 stars. I know that it was enemies to lovers, which I love that trope, so that probably bumped it up high on my list, or on my rating scale. There we go. I just know it was good summer vibes. I remember that, and that's about it. But then moving on to another book I actually have in my possession, The Roughest Draft. And this is co-written with 2 authors. In the story, there's 2 authors co-writing a book, and I'm like, oh, is this about them? Probably not. That's what I was thinking the whole time though. But they rent a beach house every couple years or whatever and write a book together, and it pops off. It does so well. And then something happened. There was a big fallout. So you're trying to figure that out in the book. But they're forced to go back into writing and have to write with each other in this beach house for like a couple months. There's some drama. Obviously, it's enemies to lovers, forced proximity, all those types of things. I didn't like the writing, and I thought the characters were like a little immature and lame. I didn't really like it. It's probably because 2 authors wrote this. Authors love words, vocab. Then 2 authors are the characters. So there's even more vocab going on. This was such a descriptive book, and I didn't like that. So I gave it 2.5 stars. I was so excited to read it. Did not like it at all. This is where things get crazy. This is where obsessions begin to form. And that is in August with Fourth Wing. We already know. We know that it's a 6. We know that it's an infinite number on the rating scale. It's perfection. Let me just show you this real quick. Yeah, Taylor, happy 21st birthday. I'm never gonna get over this. Sorry, you're gonna hear about this in every book review. This will be framed one day on my bookshelf when I actually have a home. I love this so much. Xaden and Violet are so good. Enemies to lovers once again with funny dragons. And I'm just gonna skip ahead to Iron Flame. I read this in November, another 6-star, but we're just gonna talk about it while we're talking about Fourth Wing. It was so good. And Sprint Edges. Oh, also I tabbed. I have to reread this so I can tab it. These are such good books, and I love them so much, and I can't wait for the third one. The cliffhangers are so good. The plot twists are so good. Perfection on these pages. I love it so much. So much that I do have a second copy of Fourth Wing wrapped in another bag. Yeah, it's also signed. After Fourth Wing, I read It's Not Summer Without You, which is either the second or the third book in The Summer I Turned Pretty. It's one of the books in that series. I love the show, hate the books. The books are written for like 10-year-olds. The words are gigantic on the page. There's not enough detail in this. 2 stars, and I think that's mainly because I read this at the same time as the show, like as I was watching the next season of the show, so I had more detail from the show filling this in, if that makes sense. Reading this alone, it probably would have been like a 1 or 1.5. I read Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. I love this book so much. It's childhood friends to lovers to enemies to lovers. There's some drama in this, okay? It was so good. Basically, these kids are besties when they're kids, obviously. And then something happens that you're trying to figure out the whole book. These 2 characters have to go back to town and reunite because there was like a death in the family. Things get sorted out and mixed up. I also read Mosquito Land by David Arnold. I had this for probably 2 years, and I just randomly picked it up one day. I'm like, I need to get this off my TBR. So I picked it up and read it in like a day or 2. It was so good. I couldn't put it down. It was funny. This book is also the definition of The Climb by Miley Cyrus. This whole book, you're going to see a character. Like, this character is going to see another character. The whole book. She sees the character for like 2 pages. Gone. At the end of the book. It was just a whole journey about getting to that place. And the journey was insane and really funny, problematic, and so good. And I gave it 5 stars. Then I read Fireworks by Katie Catuno. I gave it 3.5 stars. I didn't love it. It's basically these 2 best friends. One of them has always wanted to be a pop star. The other one is going to the audition with her best friend. And then she gets called to go audition. They both get the part. Also, this is not a spoiler. This happens in like the first 5 or 10 pages. They both end up getting the spot, and they go to Florida to go practice with the girl band, and then there's also a boy band there. We can imagine what happens based on the cover, but it is very drama filled. I feel like the best friends are not that great of friends, which kind of annoyed me. I felt like it was very two-faced, even though they're supposed to be lifelong best friends. I didn't like it. So because of that one part, I gave it 3.5 stars, but it was a good read, a good summer read. Then I read the third Kingdom of the Wicked book, Kingdom of the Feared. Also, this cover is stunning. I love it. This book was so spicy for no reason. It drove me a little insane. At this point, it's like the first 2 books are finally coming together. You're finally getting some conclusions. You're finally getting some answers you've been asking for 2 books, and it's in this book. But every couple pages, it's like the characters keep getting distracted because they're thinking about their love interest. Then they reunite and do a spicy thing. I feel like the author just wanted to get some spice in the series and took this book as the sign to do that. The whole plot and like the things that actually happened in this book was 5 stars, but the book overall was 3.5 because the spice was so overwhelming for no reason. Then I read The Brothers Hawthorne by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the 4th book in the Inheritance Game series. Look how beautiful this stack is. So these are the first 3 books, and technically this is like a spin-off, and it's from a different brother's point of view, but it's all in the same world and picks up right where we left off here. It's basically part of the series, just I think she wanted a different point of view to get more things going on. This is an easy 6-star series for me. This is one of my favorite book series I've ever read. I was obsessed with it from the first book. So obviously I gave it a 6 star, but if I'm being real, it's probably like a 3.5, 4. It wasn't as adventure filled as the first 3. This one was like a little bleh, but 6 star as a whole. Then we have The One You Want by Jennifer Ryan. I won this in a Goodreads giveaway. I almost DNF'd it after the first like 50 pages because the book starts with a really heavy subject. I understand why it's there, but I feel like it could have been dealt with a little lighter than it was. These friends end up coming back together. I don't remember. I think they're like separated. I think they work in different parts of the country. But one of them is getting married and the other girl is gonna go to the wedding, obviously. And there is some drama that people know each other, but there's some backstabbing, like reality TV in the book. But the ending ends up being so good, and I think it wraps up perfectly. I gave it 3 stars. Then While We Were Dating by Jasmine Guillory. This is about a actress and then normal dude. They fake date. I love that trope. This book is insanely spicy, which based on the cover you would not like guess that. It is. I gave this 3.5 stars. Then one of my favorite reads of the year is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I gave it 5.5 stars simply because it stressed me out so bad. I couldn't give it 6 stars because oh my god, this book is so stressful, but it's so good. I don't know if it's magical realism or fantasy. I'm not sure what it would be considered. There's a war between the gods. The gods aren't really present in the story, but these 2 characters are sent to war and it gets insane. And it's enemies to lovers. We know how I feel about that. I usually don't like any historical fiction type things. Maybe that's what this is. Historical fiction with magical realism. I don't know, that seems a little complicated. I don't like reading about war, but this was so good and I couldn't put it down. And the day I'm filming this is December 26th. I did indeed get Ruthless Vows this morning. It's gorgeous. It's such a pretty cover. I've also seen that the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition is black, which would match this so well. In October, I read The Darkness Knows by Cheryl. Oh, I don't know how to say that. By Cheryl. It's set in Chicago in 1938, and this girl is a radio actress, and someone she works with dies, and she finds her. And then she gets tangled all up in it, and she has a personal guard, and I think there's gonna be some spicy romance going on with them. But this is only the first in the series, and I am not gonna read the rest. I wasn't that obsessed with this book, so I gave it 3 stars. Then I read 6 of Crows, and if you watched my November wrap-up video, you would know what happened with this book. I did not read Shadow and Bone first, that trilogy, and apparently you're supposed to, and you would know a lot more about the first 100 pages of this book. And I was very confused for the first 100 pages of this book, so I only gave this 4 stars because of that, and I'm sure that if I read the trilogy first, this would be a 5 star. In November, I read ACOTAR, and I gave it 2.5 stars. We already know how I feel about this. I've made so many videos, and in my November wrap-up, I talked about it a decent amount. Just know that I didn't like it. At the beginning of December, I did read ACOMAF, and as you can see by my tabs, I ate it up. I loved it so much. I kind of take back what I said about this. It was still not a good book, but I do need to reread it because it's essential for this, and a lot of hints happen in this book that I just did not think was gonna be important. ACOTAR was 2.5 stars and ACOMAF was 5 stars. After ACOTAR, I read Twice Shy by Sarah Hoggle. This was just a quick little romance in between my fantasies, so I gave it 3.5 stars. Then, as I already talked about, I read Iron Flame. A Curse for True Love finally came out. This book was quite disappointing based on the Ballad of Never After ending. I thought this was gonna blow my mind. I thought I was gonna be in a reading coma after this. Couldn't pick up anything else because I was just so blown away by how incredible it was. That is unfortunately not how I felt. I thought this was a little boring. Not much happened. The ending of Ballad of Never After solved itself too fast and too simply. I gave it 4 stars. Then I read The Perfectionist by Sarah Shepard. This book is a spin-off to the Pretty Little Liars series, and I loved Pretty Little Liars. But this was like all the toxic elements of high school coming into one spot, while also a lot of crimes were happening and there was a murder. So it's just a lot of negative things all in one book. And I almost DNF'd it like 50 pages in. It's 1 star. I will be donating this. I don't even want it on my shelf. This was the worst read of the year. Then we have Throne of the Fallen, which is technically a spin-off of Kingdom of the Wicked. It takes place right after that series, just like the Inheritance games with Brothers Hawthorne. It's that same concept, where this picks up right where the other left off, but it's from a different character's point of view. This book is also spicy. This author just accepted the spice and rolled with it, but she learned how to do it in this book. It did not take away from the story like it did in Kingdom of the Feared. It kind of added to it in this one, which was perfect. So I ended up giving this book 4 stars. Then I read By a Thread by Lucy Score. This one was a 3 star. I didn't think it was that great of a book. It was very hyped up. and I was disappointed by it. It is enemies to lovers, so it gets bonus points there. But it's a Grumpy Sunshine thing, and I'm realizing I'm not the biggest fan of that. My first read of December was Akamath, which I already talked about. I just finished The Christmas Fix by Lucy Score. This is also kind of a Grumpy Sunshine trope. Also enemies to lovers. I gave it 4 stars. There's a child in this, and usually people don't like kids in books, but this kid was funny, and she is like the thing that stopped the 2 adults from being stupid. So I loved it. I loved her. She was a great addition to this book. It was just a nice fluffy romance for Christmas. I didn't expect a 5 or 6 star from this, so a 4 star is pretty good. My current read that I'm hoping will be done in December, it's the 26th right now, so I have 4 days. 5? I don't remember how many days are in this month. Anyway, Lovelight Farms by B.K. Borison. I am only 30 pages in right now, so obviously I cannot give an idea of how it's gonna be. The potential is there. The setting is freaking adorable. As of right now, this is a great book. The 30 pages I've read have been great. That is all the books I read in 2023. I hope you love this video so much. If you have any book recommendations that I should read, leave them in the comments. I am buying books all the time. And if you like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe and turn on bell notifications to get notified every time I post a new video. And I will see you next time. Peace.